Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Campus Pride by Visibility Day Google Plus Hangout. Thank you so much for joining us and for celebrating bisexuality and middle sexualities with us. Today we have an incredible panel to discuss a number of issues relating to the bi community in all sorts of categories, and we are so happy to have you join us. If you have a moment, please follow Campus Pride at Campus Pride on Twitter, and feel free to submit your comments and questions on Twitter today during the Hangout. Also, feel free to submit your questions right here in the Google Plus Hangout. So let's go ahead and jump right in. My name is Rebby Kern, and I'm the Media, Communications, and Programs Manager at Campus Pride. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am more than happy to present to you our incredible panel today of wonderful individuals. Nay, would you like to go ahead and start and introduce yourself to the audience?
My name is Nay Fitzsimmons. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Wisconsin System School, and I'm a co-founder of BiTalks, a Tumblr blog ran by people.
Awesome, thank you. Kiana? Oh, 1 second, Kiana. It looks like you are muted. We'll go ahead and go to, yes, we can hear you now. Very good, thank you. King?
Oh, lovely. Hi, I'm King. My gender pronouns are he, him, his, these, theirs, theirs, and I'm currently the marketing coordinator for the Jewish Federation in North America's Long Beach branch, and I'm also the former vice chair of the California Young Democrats LGBTQ caucus.
Very good, thank you. Odd? Oh, Odd, you are muted.
I'm unmuted?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, hi, I'm Traher. I'm the Vice President of Binet USA, and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And I was recently at the White House Bisexual Policy meeting about 2 days ago on Monday.
Very good, thank you for joining us today. And we also have Alexandra.
Hey everyone, I'm Alexandra Bolles. I'm a program strategist at GLAAD. My pronouns are she and her. Like Odd, I was also recently at the White House policy briefing, and I'm a co-founder of BiWeek.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So to our audience, you can see that we have just an incredible group of folks here that will be joining you and answering your questions and discussing some really tough issues related to our community. But to start, Odd, I would like to go ahead and have you discuss with the audience your experience at the White House and what is important for our community moving along for policymakers.
The White House was really, really great. I've never seen so many, I think we had 90 people. Maybe Alexandra was there. It was like 90 people. It was we talked about areas such as mental health, entrepreneurship, physical health, immigration and asylum, and a few others that I can't remember. It was just so much. It was just great. And it's important for policymakers to be aware of bisexual issues so that they can direct funding and resources towards initiatives to help with the various disparities bisexuals face. And that will just lift us all up and help everybody.
Very good, thank you. Was there anything else that you wanted to add for the audience that they're curious about what's happening in the White House?
Well, I can't say a lot because it was an off the record.
Very good.
I wish I could just, tell everybody, but we have made some significant progress, and we all really stood on the shoulders of giants in that room, from the people who helped lay the groundwork in 2013 to meet with the Obama administration. And we definitely received some good feedback and some good work with the various agencies.
That's right. Well, thank you for all of the work that you're doing, Binet USA and all the organizations that we're all a part of, just doing phenomenal work for our community, and I'm honored to be a part of the movement as well. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm sure the audience is already generating some questions and really anticipating the things that we're going to talk about today. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about sort of media and entertainment. When we turn on the TV and go online and go on Tumblr and Twitter, we oftentimes see that there are spokespeople who have been assigned to our community to represent us as a whole. People like Miley Cyrus, who we might have some specific feels about, one person having representing all of us when maybe we didn't assign that. What's your take on the role of these individuals in the media and how it relates to maybe the more grassroots work and the activism work that we're doing on the ground as a bi-pan fluid community?
I can start on that one. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're good to go, Alexandra.
Okay, great. I think, folks like Miley Cyrus or Evan Rachel Wood or, someone else who's also looked to a lot as representative of the community, it's the reality that, these folks are definitely part of our BI+ community and they're sharing their experiences with the media. And I think, it's great that we have folks who are visible and, are not afraid to identify themselves in the media and raise that visibility in that way. But, I also think that as fellow members of the BI+ community, we're allowed to educate those spokespeople in a loving way and empower them with accurate and vital and inclusive information about the intersections in our communities and the realities of different people in our community. But I think a great thing about some of these spokespeople, like Evan Rachel Wood, she takes her role pretty seriously, and she actually just shared on Twitter not only her experience, but a lot of stats and info that have come out about wellness and health in the BI community, and she's taking her role as a spokesperson pretty seriously.
Great, thanks for that. Anybody else want to chime in here?
I can say something.
Okay.
I feel it's important to kind of accept people who are comfortable with using our words, because I think frequently a lot of celebrities will stick to the no label thing, and I think it's important to accept them but feel comfortable with addressing their missteps or their being okay with educating if we feel up to it. I think as a community, it's important for us to know that the people in the public eye are okay or are happy with identifying the same as us or similar to us, but also feeling okay with saying hey, that's not okay to say, or this new thing is happening and we would like to tell you about it.
Very good, thank you. And what about Lady Gaga is about to be a big star on American Horror Story, the hotel, and there's been a lot of buzz about her role on the show and her bisexuality both in real life and on the show, which leads us to the stigmatizing phenomena that happens when bisexuals are over-sexualized, especially in media. Does anybody have any response to that, or maybe any words around Lady Gaga's role on Hotel? A little bit.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go to Kiana.
I'm raising my hand like I'm in class. This is great. Well, we do know that in media, over-sexualizing, especially bisexual women, who bear the great brunt of this, does lead in real life to things like rape, sexual assault, and intimate partner violence. And my words about Lady Gaga on Horror Story is, I love her to death. I love Lady Gaga. I've bought all her albums. Her music helped me get through some really tough stuff, but I'm kind of very much worried because American Horror Story doesn't have the best track record with portraying things sensitively. I couldn't get through the first season, and I just vaguely read, I've read the Wikipedia pages about other ones, but I'm a little bit concerned. I want to say we should trust Gaga, but she does really have a flair for the very big, very dramatic, very over the top. So I'm a little worried. It could be wonderful. It could be a wonderful bonanza representation, but I think we should be prepared for it not to be, and be ready with resources and articles talking about like the problems and reaffirming, especially for bi women, that they don't have to be over-sexualized, they don't have to do anything they don't want to do, that their body is their own, that they can say no, and if they have been assaulted or if they feel they're in a dangerous place, there is hope and resources for them.
I think you're right, and especially what's been said twice so far is that meeting these items with resources, right, and working with these stars and writers and folks in the media to let us help you to help us, right?
Right,
and work a little more diplomatically. Kiana, it sounded like you had spoken up there. Did you want to add? Yeah, absolutely. American Horror Story is a TV show by Ryan Murphy that has had a number of seasons, each season sort of shifting in theme, essentially. And so Lady Gaga has been cast for the Hotel series, and so everything's going to be happening within a hotel. It's sort of a scary, kind of creepy show in a little bit in terms of taste there. And so Lady Gaga is going to be playing a bisexual character in the show. And so that's what folks have been discussing, is she going to be a good representation for us, or is this something, like God said, that we should be prepared with to meet with some educational needs there? Does that make a little bit more sense? That does make sense. Yeah, go for it.
I'd love to go off of something that Odd said too. Odd, you made a really good point about how what we see in entertainment has real life consequences. And I'm not speaking specifically about Hotel. I haven't seen it yet, of course, and I don't really know a lot about Lady Gaga's character, but GLAAD does a lot of work tracking representation of the whole LGBT community, including bi representation in the media. And what we see a lot is that the bi community is still really underrepresented, and a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when we are represented in the media, what's really being represented is sort of a perpetuation of the stereotypes that exist about us, and one of those misconceptions is, and stereotypes, is hypersexuality and hypersexualization. being conniving and being liars, and all these things that are no more true for the bi community than they are for any other community. And it's important to have to have visibility that's responsible and accurate, so that people get to know how multifaceted the bi community is and what bi lives look like, and beyond just these reductions to stereotypes. And having those strong representations on the screen can build visibility in the real world and in real lives in a way that helps sort of break these stereotypes and break through some of these disparities that result from those stereotypes, like Odd mentioned, interpersonal violence and being underreported in data, things like that.
Thanks for sharing that. And just to interrupt here for a moment, Mary, I see that you just joined us. For the audience, if you can go ahead and state your name, the organization that we're representing today, and your gender pronouns, and we'll go ahead and move forward with the discussion after that.
Hi, I'm Mary Hoelscher, and am I coming through on audio?
Yes.
Great. And my pronoun is they, and I am with the Bisexual Organizing Project, and I also work in St. Paul Public Schools coordinating their LGBTQ program.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us. We are discussing media and entertainment, and just got done talking about Lady Gaga's role in American Horror Story. Kiana, you had brought up something that clicked with me about how power and privilege plays into the roles of these public perceptions of our community. This would go to everybody. How does power and privilege play into the way that folks represent entire communities, especially for the bi community, and in what ways can we leverage that to get the information and education out that we've referenced already in our discussion?
I think when the perception is off, it just perpetuates this erasure, which keeps the bi community at a disadvantage, right? Because we can't effectively serve a community that we're not validating and that we don't acknowledge as being there. And if what we're seeing in the media is discouraging, bi plus folks on the ground from coming out, then we can't do anything to build them up and to build our community up as a whole.
Very good. Anybody else want to add to that? A couple other items that had been brought up as well was intimate partner violence, as well as not being represented in data, and how the over-sexualization plays into the intimate partner violence. There are statistics here that show that 61% of bisexual individuals face intimate partner violence, compared to 43% of lesbians and 35% of straight women. What can be said about these statistics, and why are these numbers so high? Odd, do you have maybe a starting point?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely biphobia. That's definitely the root. And when it comes to the intersection of gender and women, it's definitely misogyny as well. It's biphobia and misogyny, and it's definitely the hypersexualization, the idea that bi women are always available, ready to go for sex, that it's horrible, but the idea that you can't rape a bi person because they must always want it. The statistics are really high because bi people are also more likely to stay in abusive relationships because they don't have access to an out, to care, to a supportive community where they can be out and have someone say, hey, what's going on isn't right, here's what you can do, you need to get out. And there's a lot of shame, and people stay in the closet about being bi and about being survivors of violence. And that needs to end. We need to push more resources and more community towards helping people overcome this and get to a good place.
And I think sort of the consequence, you know, of like you said, people not realizing that, you know, bi folks are disproportionately survivors of interpersonal violence, is that there just aren't, not only bi specific or not a readily available access to bi specific resources for survivors of violence, but it's hard to find even bi-inclusive resources for bi survivors of these violences. So that absolutely needs to become available so that folks can feel empowered to get out of these abusive relationships, these abusive situations. And you know, I think at the heart of what you were just describing, the misogyny and the biphobia, is just this perpetuation of the idea that bi people can't be trusted. And these are sort of notions that we see, what the data does, what the data we do have shows us is that in these situations, these stereotypes and harmful misconceptions about bi folks and their untrustworthiness or their greediness are actually invoked in these moments of violence. And it's a dangerous and horrible situation, obviously.
Thank you both for sharing that. Definitely addressing the biphobia, the misogyny, and that conception that bi people can't be trusted is definitely a way that we can address this issue of violence and empower bi people. Because of the violence that the bi community faces, health and wellness is a huge, huge thing that we should all be paying attention to. And so what are some key aspects of health that you implement in your life? Understanding these statistics and taking care of yourself and others, what are some ways that you take care of your personal health and wellness?
I'll go. So for me personally, I do a lot of self-care time, and I intentionally surround myself that are usually people of color and also that identify as openly bi and queer. And if they happen to be heterosexual or gay, then I'm much more conscientious about like the topics I bring up and how to navigate that world with them, and also bringing up intersectionality. I also work with a predominantly older, heteronormative, like faith-based demographic, so it's nice to tie in my life and issues that I care about with my work. But also, I tell my boss, and luckily checks in with me all the time, so that way I'm not emotionally burnt out. And it's good to just also tell your employers exactly like how you are, if they get to know you on a little bit more of a personal level as well, if you're fortunate. Luckily, I work in the public sector as well as nonprofit. And we pride ourselves on having a sustainable staff infrastructure.
It's important. And Mary, would you like to share? And then we'll go to Kiana.
Sure. One of the important aspects of health is developing a positive sense of identity, which I think is part of my self-care, is finding myself in community with other bi, pan, poly, omni, queer people. And I also do a lot of running and hiking and getting outdoors to think and to have some time to myself. I have a family, so I make sure to prioritize spending time with them. And as was already mentioned, I am upfront with my employer about mental health needs. I have anxiety disorder like so many other bisexually identified people, and I do take medication when necessary. I've had therapeutic relationships and sought out mental health care, and one of the first things I do when seeking mental health care is be very forward and direct with the provider, even when I'm making the appointment. You know, I'm a bi-identified queer person, and I'm genderqueer, so if that's going to be any challenge, or if they are not experienced with serving those populations, then it's not going to be a good fit. And so when seeking services, being very explicit with what you're looking for. I do the same thing when I'm speaking with my medical professionals, my family practice doctor, just being very clear with them. This is my this is the way that I live my life and my identities and the nature of my relationships. And so if it's a good fit, then we can move forward.
Thanks for that. Developing relationships in the workplace is critical to find that support. And Kiana, we'll go to you next. I love the way that you described us as family. I think we can all relate to that. Alexandra, we'll go to you, and then Odd.
So I definitely subscribe to the idea that self-care is a radical act, and I think it's so important, especially, when it can be harder for queer folks and bi folks to feel like someone's taking care of them or feel that love. I am a big fan of yoga and meditation. It really helps me combat my anxiety, but I was talking to my girlfriend about this, that I think meditating actually builds a lot of coping skills, coping mechanisms, and resiliency, which is super important. And I also think, for me, spiritual health is really important. I'm lucky enough that I've grown up in a really not only inclusive but affirming denomination in Christianity, and it's always helped me find sort of that social support that, can be so vital to getting from day to day.
Thanks for that. Odd, we'll go to you about wellness, how you implement that in your life.
Okay, I am a huge softie, so I'm like a marshmallow. And so one of the most important things I've learned for self-care is to say no. And this comes across in a lot of ways. It can be say no to biphobia and just leave the situation and be like, nope, not going to get into this on Facebook right now. I do not have time. I do not have the energy. Or it could be, I really want to volunteer and do a million projects, but I'm just going to get burnout and too tired, and I will not be able to do any one thing well. It'll all just be kind of half done. But also, especially in like therapeutic relationships and relationships with care providers, and I get definitely on campus, like professors and stuff, you can say no. If you go and come out to your therapist and say, I'm a bi person, and I'm going through depression because my grandmother died, and they go, well, let's talk about your bisexuality, and you're like, no, the problem is my grandmother died, and they do that, you can say, no, I don't want to continue this relationship with you because you are not working for me. If you go to a doctor and you come out to them and they say, well, that's just terrible, or you encounter some biphobia, you do have the right to say, this is not going to work. I do not want to continue this visit or this conversation, and you can find another doctor. And if you're looking for a bi-competent therapist, there is a guide up on evenodd.wordpress.com, and it's odd is spelled like my name. And there's a guide to finding a bi-competent therapist, because that's really important, because sometimes you'll go through like Psychology Today and you'll want that support, and it'll say, oh, LGBT friendly therapist, and you'll go in and no, it'll be they might be really great for lesbians, but incredibly intensely biphobic. Or if you go in as a bi-trans person, they'll be like, oh no, I just do lesbian and gay stuff, no trans support. And it can be a really stressful thing, because if you're seeking support for self-care, if you're seeking a therapeutic relationship, you're already probably coming from a place of hurt, where you're really vulnerable, and then going in and having these with providers, it does really double down the trauma. And you have to be really strong and not internalize it and just be like, you're the boss, you're interviewing these people to be on your care team, and just like in any other interview for a job, if they come in and say some, ridiculous stuff, you're the boss, you can be like, nope, this interview's over, I'm going to go do something else. And so you can say no. You can say no to situations, to people, to volunteering, to biphobia. Take care of you and do what you can and what you feel comfortable doing.
And Nay, some other remarks around wellness?
I like to echo everybody's stuff about self-care, especially for mental health. I've learned to rest and create space when I need it. that has to do with, like, even with friends and family, when I know that I need time to myself, I have to say, I need space. Please just give me my own time. Also with communication with friends, trying to be open and honest about relationships just in case things happen, or just being like gracious to your friends and telling them that it's okay to speak with you about it. Also blogging, I think, is super important to me. Like, I think that's the biggest form of self-care that I have, is connecting with other people that I would otherwise not be able to connect with if I didn't have blogging or social media or anything like that.
Thanks, everybody. Definitely, wellness is sort of a triad of taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, really spiritually. It can go on. And because of the staggering statistics that show that our community is at high risk for really serious issues, including violence, that taking care of ourselves is critical for survival, and depending on each other as family and finding allies. Nay, you had mentioned your blogging, and as a way for us as a community to address biphobia, can be our storytelling and sharing with people, especially on social media, primarily today as Bi Visibility Day, which is trending on Twitter, which is huge. Like, that's a huge celebration for us. And so this is a way that we can help fight that. And so in what way do you all continue your storytelling, both inside and outside of the walls of what you do on your day-to-day?
Well, GLAAD's sort of whole mission is definitely storytelling oriented and empowering folks to tell their own stories, and also empowering the media to share those stories in a responsible and accurate way. So it's sort of built into my day-to-day work, and really just finding diverse voices and diverse experiences. For example, we just like an hour ago, GLAAD put up a video talking to 3 different Bi leaders with 3 very different personalities, very different careers, but one sort of cohesive narrative about how their bisexuality is imbued in everything they do. And it was really my feeling about the White House policy briefing. One of the main takeaways I had, and that I actually blogged about for GLAAD's site also, was that was a space where everyone was taking sort of their difficult traumas of the past and present and reclaiming them in a way that was going to make a difference for the whole community nationwide, that people's traumas can be used to, literally change lives and change policies simply through the act of storytelling and using that knowledge and experience and your own identity as a culture-changing agent.
And King, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to piggyback off that. I'm a big believer in narratives and sharing my own personal stories of coming out, and I still come out on a daily basis as being openly bi to all my typically straight and gay normative circles. And it's really cool, luckily, to work with an older demographic, an older senior demographic, as well as a high school and college student demographic. So when I talk openly as a bi / queer person of color that's Asian American, Asian Pacific Islander American, it gets people thinking that, yes, I'm trying to break down stereotypes, that there are people like myself that do exist, and there are other people out there that may have identities similar to you. I have many best friends, and they all are very unique in their own identities, and so people can relate to them as sorts too. And luckily we're all bi, so we have that common knowledge that allows us to know exactly what issues we're going through, and also allows us to work with youth that also are coming out and still trying to figure out exactly what their identities may be.
Thank you. And Nay, we'll go back to you if you can discuss a little bit about the way that you gather stories and how BiTalks works on Tumblr.
So BiTalks was formed last September, so we're a year old. We publish prompts every couple of weeks, kind of depending on our schedules. We're all, we were all college students at the same time when we formed it, and throughout the semesters, 2 of us graduated in May. We've taken on some new people to help us out. We try to schedule every 2 weeks, so we publish a prompt, and then people will respond with their narratives and their stories and tag them with our Tumblr tag, which is BiTalks, and we reblog all the stories. So basically, like, the 4 of us who are moderators, sometimes we don't have time to interject our own stories, or those stories don't apply to our specific narratives. But we like to amplify voices of people from our community and keep it positive, because we found that before we formed BiTalks, we were all like losing positivity in blogging. Like, we were all feeling kind of worn down and feeling that we were always combating biphobia, and we were trying to create a positive space for stories and narratives to go.
Thanks for sharing that. Always tell your stories. That's my point of advice. And so as we talk about sharing our stories and continuing the dialogue as a community, I want to sort of take a look at how this can intersect with health and wellness also, because we deal with a number of misconceptions every day. You know, one big one is that there's a misconception that bisexual people, pan-fluid people don't exist, while 52% of the U.S. population, based on a study from the Williams Institute, that 52% of the U.S. population self-identify as bisexual. And so sharing our stories and also addressing health and wellness, in what way would you see that HIV and AIDS would play into these misconceptions as well? That maybe it's something that our community doesn't need to worry about. What is your take on that, and what resources do you have to share?
Well, can I start then? If no one's jumping in?
It's all you, King.
Oh, cool. Awesome. I would say, like, we have to openly talk about that HIV and AIDS is not just a gay man disease, a quote-unquote gay man disease. It's actually a health topic that relates to people regardless of your socioeconomic status, your nationality, your age, and especially genders and orientations. Bring up how safe sex practices work that are also culturally sensitive to different demographics is important to tackle this systemic cycle of bi-erasure and stereotyping that unfortunately continues happening.
Very good. And Kiana, do you have anything to add to that from some of the work that you've been doing? Right, and getting tested regularly and understanding the forms of the way that HIV can pass through. And so with that knowledge and understanding, you can have better conversations with your partners as well. Age United is a really great resource, and they have a number of resources on their website for communities that are highly affected by HIV and AIDS. And you can go to their website at ageunited.org. They do a lot of work with the CDC as well, so I highly encourage you to be open about these conversations. Do get tested regularly, and there are a number of prevention items that can be discussed as well, and so the more knowledge that we have about that for a community.
That's where I'd want to jump in.
Please.
I think one of the things that we've been missing is comprehensive sexual health curriculum beginning in middle school and moving on through high school, and it's a federal problem, and so that's part of our policy initiatives and why it's so important that the bisexual community be very assertive about its work in K-12 education. There are efforts that are already in process, but my experience in the K-12 environment is that without bisexual people at the table, then time and time again, bi-erasure occurs, much to the detriment of our students. I was at the GSA Network's national gathering 2 years ago when it was in Minneapolis, and it was a fantastic event. Many of the youth that I spoke to, certainly more than half, identified as bi, queer, or pan, and yet on stage and in many of the discussions that were adult-led, bi was only mentioned if it was within the LGBT acronym. I'm reviewing the 6th edition of a national, or it's a statewide resource from Michigan right now. It's a fantastic resource, but throughout it there's oversights about bi people and missed opportunities, and it's going to take a lot of people noticing those and having access to the information to interrupt it. But certainly within every single high school students and middle school students' experiences, they need to be learning about bi people as well as the different risks and the different assets that they need to develop and able to be keeping themselves healthy and keeping their partners healthy.
And Mary, would you say that there are ways that we can interact locally and on a state level to help influence the sex ed teaching that's happening?
Absolutely. For one thing, schools throughout the country remain very locally driven, and so connecting with GSAs and working with students, and so a youth-adult partnership is very helpful to supporting youth in finding their own spaces, working with whatever your local school board is. So a great partnership opportunity is getting a local bi group or a college campus group to work with a GSA, then to advocate for comprehensive and bi-inclusive sexual health curriculum presenting at the local school board level. Even at the local school level, you have a lot of capacity to make on-the-ground grassroots change, and even at the state level, there's a lot more opportunity sometimes than it seems, but certainly I found the most effective, sometimes rapid way to influence change is going through the student population themselves. We have a student group who put together videos that talked about how important LGBT inclusive, and they did emphasize bi people, sexual health curriculum mattered to them. And although I had been working with teachers for over a year, 2 years, encouraging them to be engaging in those topics, they'd somewhat avoided it. But when they heard it from their own students, that message was so much more salient and meaningful to them. So that partnership working with the students can be very effective.
And that's definitely a big way for us to find ways to develop allies while also creating a larger way for education and a two-way conversation that continues. And so to bring this back for the panel, in what ways, in what aspects do you find developing allies to the bi community has been helpful in the things that you do for work in your communities, or maybe some past experiences on a college campus? And Nay, we'll go to you, and then we'll go over to Alexandra.
I found it very helpful to have allies on a college campus. When I arrived at school, originally at my university, they didn't have any bi programming within the LGBTQ Resource Center or within their GSA type of program, and they had a Queer People of Color organization. There was not very many programs for queer or bi identified people, so I was the person to kind of push that forward, and went to like the leaders of those organizations and resource centers and asked like, hey, it's Bi Visibility Day or Celebrate Bisexuality Day or a week, can we have something? So we ended up getting something, and still I networked with so many people that at my school that now they're still reaching out to me to help them. So I was still sending them resources all day today to post to Facebook and to put in the resource center even as I'm gone. So having those allies, even for future people, to be able to know that they can exist in those spaces, because some things were said within some meetings at the beginning of the year when I first arrived there where I was like, okay, this is not an accepting environment for me. So luckily I felt comfortable enough to approach people and say like, hey, we need to make this an inclusive environment because it's not right now. So forming those allies is detrimental not only for yourself but for people of the future to be able to be comfortable.
Exactly, and remembering that allyship doesn't necessarily mean, hi, I'm your friend and you're bisexual, but you're bisexual, I support your community, and I'm going to work with you to make things happen. Alexandra, do you have anything to add? And then we'll go to King.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like what you just said about allies being not just a person who sort of stands with you, but a person who helps you get stuff done is so critical to explaining why allies are vital to the bi community. I think having allies is really important for creating sustainable, pervasive change, on a policy level in local communities, engaging, we were talking about sex ed, comprehensive sex ed, or, inclusive curriculums. You need allies in schools and on education boards to make that happen. I'm able to do, great bi work with GLAAD because I have allies in my organization. I have, I think also having allies in social life, in families and your friends, that's so critical to building the social support that helps us, like I said earlier, get from day to day and be healthy and, mentally and socially and everything. I think allies are absolutely critical. But exactly like you said, part of being a good ally is being able to say sort of what do you need and also acknowledging what you don't know yet. And so that's sort of where our responsibility comes into, I don't like the phrase call out, but sort of call people in with love and try to share your own experiences. And I think that's one of the great things about Bi Week is that everyone's producing so much content and making that information so available to not only for bi folks to share, but for allies and potential allies to the bi community to read and learn and share on their own.
And I'd love to continue that into some of the next responses, is that how Bi Visibility Day and Bi Week is continuing our community to grow our allies, as well as helping break the misconceptions and the other things that we've discussed, but more so, how are we gaining more allies through Bi Visibility Day? We'll go to King.
Well, I'm a big believer that we talk about issues with all different community members, and that includes like our elected officials. For me, asking them if we, as openly bi, queer, pan, fluid, poly people join like different commissions, that's important. And also working with their staffers so that way funds can be allocated to local community groups and agencies that work to develop ways that attack community issues that face the bi community. In addition, on school campuses, it's nice to have representation and working with empowering openly bi and queer and pan students and people all over the gender and orientation spectrum in order to like know exactly that these people do exist and that they themselves have a voice that should be at the table and that they're advocating correctly. And in addition with our allies, it's great, I think great personally, to continue educating themselves. They need to educate themselves, but we also have to give recommendations, like piggybacking off the person before me, not necessarily with sharp criticisms, but recommendations that this is how they themselves can better grasp issues that face bi people, and therefore they can become a better advocate for overall.
Absolutely. And just to remind the audience, we are taking questions. We'll be moving into our question and answer session here too. If you have any questions to any specific panelists regarding what we've shared tonight or some additional resources, please tweet and use the handle @CampusPride. And Kiana, we'll go to you next, and then we'll go to Odd, and then we'll start taking some questions from the audience. Thank you for that. And Odd, we'll go to you, and then we'll check and see if we have some questions from the audience. Feel free to tweet using hashtag #ByPrideDay. Odd?
Okay, this Bi Visibility Day is amazing. We trended in the U.S. Bi White House 15 trended on Monday briefly, and we're trending world.
Are you still there, Odd? Oh, looks like we may have lost them. Alrighty. Well, Odd, are you there? It is
Not just in your Facebook and Twitter feeds, so you can give them to allies, and we can all reap the benefit of that. Because sometimes it's wonderful to have an ally come in when you're just like, I can't deal with this biphobia, this thing right now as a bi person. And it's wonderful when you can have an ally step in and take over the debate, the discussion, take some of the brunt of that biphobia and successfully give you some space to heal and regroup. And I mean, we're trending on Twitter. That is so amazing. No bi hashtag has ever trended on Twitter. So just, for the novelty factor, I hope people all around the world are clicking on it and seeing all the amazing tweets and all the amazing things we're doing and learning more and becoming allies.
Yes, this is incredible, and doing work in media and communications, this is thrilling to know that we are definitely making some big change here and addressing some of our misconceptions. So because we're running a little short on time here, if you do have any questions out in the audience, feel free to tweet using the hashtag BiPrideDay, and we'll address those questions online. You can also go to campuspride.org and search our resources. Also, Recognize, which is the Voices of Bisexual Men, was published. That is a great project that Robin Oakes was a part of, and we highly encourage you to get a copy. If you need help getting a copy, let us know. Maybe we'll give some copies out here for people who have participated online as part of the Google Plus Hangout. And go to Binet USA. There are just dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds and thousands of opportunities for you to get involved, to learn more, and learn how you can advocate for our community. At this time, as we wrap up, I would love to go through each of the panelists and have them share important resources that they want to share with the audience and major takeaways. Nay, we'll start with you, and we'll move across the panel.
Like I said earlier, I'm involved with a blog called BiTalks, so it's bitalks.tumblr.com. You can come there for many narratives of different types of people. It's very diverse, and we try to select topics that will cover many bases. If you have any recommendations, you can leave them in our Ask or inbox, and you can submit anonymously if you feel like that's the most comfortable option for you. I think my major takeaway for today and this week overall is like the power of our community is becoming so large, and it's like the most inspiring thing that I've seen. I didn't find bi community until I was like 21, and so like this stuff happening is super huge and great for younger people and people of the future that are coming into our communities.
Absolutely. Mary, we'll go to you next, and then Kiana.
To make more. Sorry, I'm still working with community organizations that have been serving LGBTQ people for a long time to get more resources available that are supportive of our bisexual youth. I want to make sure they have the opportunity to get to college campuses. And so I'm going to really just focus on the human rights report of supporting and caring for our bisexual youth, because it was the first large report focusing on bisexual youth, and that is my passion.
Thank you. Kiana? Thanks, Kiana. King, and then we'll go to Odd.
Work by Robin Oakes, last name OCHS. In addition, we have the American Institute of Bisexuality, as well as Bi Magazine, so please check those out. If you're a college student, please check out the Victory Institute and Fund. Again, the Victory Institute and Fund, where they bring college students and also people out of college and those that are interested in running for office. They give you the resources, services, connections also, in order to like make sure that you are pursuing a passion in public policy work or nonprofit or whatever you're interested in. I'm also going to put out names like the New Organizing Institute, the Young Elected Officials Network, YP4, National Center for Transgender Equality, and etc. And if anything, also look up your local neighborhood associations to see how you can be involved. Oh yeah, and of course Greek life. If you're a college student, if there are actually gay, bi, progressive organizations out there like Delta Lambda Phi, so consider those.
Thanks, King. Odd?
Of course, Binet, USA.org, and bisexualweek.com, all spelled out, has a ton of great resources. It has the public policy infographic you can look at, and a bunch of other stuff that's great. If you want to start your own local bi group or bi group in your city, or you just want really great handouts and resources, I would suggest the Bisexual Resource Center in Boston, the BRC. They'll tell you how to. Another thing, since we talked about it, that's really important is for bi women survivors, you can go to biwomensurvivors.org, and they are just fantastic, full of resources, and just they're the only specifically women-oriented resource for survivors of abuse and trauma out there, and they're fantastic. And I hope everyone has a happy Bi Visibility Day.
Thanks, Odd. And was that Bi Women Support?
Yes,
Bi Women Support Network? Okay.
Yes, Bi Women Support Network.
Okay, thank you. And Alexandra?
So I think one of my main takeaways from this Hangout has been that, celebration, happiness, and, our own success and self-care in the face of all the issues of systemic oppression that we discussed. Those are all radical acts. And when we take the time to celebrate ourselves and love ourselves, we model that behavior to other people, and we can teach others how they should be loving us as well and supporting us, so we can actually gain, full equality and full acceptance. I think in terms of resources, GLAAD.org/bisexual and GLAAD.org/biweek2015 are great resources. They have a lot of shareable and accessible information on the bi community. There's always stuff being added, especially this week. And we're really proud of the materials that we've come up with, and also the stories that a whole range of bi people have given us and are sharing with us through our sites to help spread the word.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining on. Thank you to all of our panelists. These were some incredible resources, so if you didn't get to write them all down, when you show a friend this Google Hangout on YouTube at the Campus Pride YouTube channel, then you can review it again and check those resources out. Feel free to use this tool as a discussion tool in any of your Queer Straight Alliance groups on campus, or with friends privately, or use this as an opportunity to do some training in your work support networks. Again, my name is Rebby Kern. I was so happy to be a moderator for you all. Sending you love and bi fives from Campus Pride. We're signing off, and we'll see you all again soon. Happy Bi Visibility Day.
Thank you.